Welcome martial arts fans and global martial arts enthusiasts to the 7th World Kungfu Championships. We are here to celebrate the arts and non-combative forms of traditional WUSHU, also known as too many, as Kung Fu. The World Championships come to you live on location from the Sichuan International Tourism Trade Expo Center in beautiful Emeishan City in the gorgeous province of Sichuan, an incredible city, wonderful people, and I might add, the very, very best food in the world. It is a beautiful and inspiring place to be here at the World Championships with over 3,000 athletes from dozens and dozens of countries. And today, in the afternoon session of day one on Carpet 2, we will see some women's and men's traditional styles, as well as men's and women's Shaolin Xuan. We will expand on that later on today. The Shaolin Xuan will appear combative in nature, but these are the beautiful non-combative forms of WUSHU, the Taolu. We see some of our judges and administrators. The World Kung Fu Championships representing the true diversity of the Chinese martial arts. We showcase the traditional forms, and it is a competition, make no mistake. But it's also about the expressions of athleticism, individuality, and true martial artistry. The traditional World Championships celebrate and showcase, in addition to competition, the history, the culture, the philosophy, the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional development qualities of martial arts. It's something we're going to talk about all weekend long here at the World Championships. These athletes and artists travel from all over the world. They share ideas, they share culture, and of course, they share a love of the martial arts. Take a look at our judges here. They'll play an important role, and we will get underway with the action shortly. We will be starting today, afternoon session of day one on Carpet 2 here, the International Women's Group. They call it the other traditional Xuan. You'll see a lot of variety in the techniques and the demonstrations today. If you were with us for the World Championships in Russia only a month ago, that was the combative and the modern interpretation. This is the traditional WUSHU, the Kung Fu Championships. And we will see the fundamental, foundational movements, techniques, and styles of this historic Chinese martial arts family. Of course, if you're joining us and you are watching Kung Fu, traditional WUSHU for the first time, we will stay with the action as it is a competition, but it is also about so much more. We'll see artists from all around the world, but you'll also see a real diversity in age, from as young as 6 and 7 years old, even younger. There's a tiny little group that you'll be seeing today. And then you'll see senior citizens who find martial arts gives them stability, comfort, helps with their joints, combat's aging. All of these are aspects of what we share here at the World Kung Fu Championships. So the women's, they call it the other traditional styles, other traditional Schwan. So you see a great variety, but you will be able to tell from the beginning there's grace mixed with explosiveness and power. And we will open up with WUSHU of the United States. You see 17 competitors in this first group. Take a look right here. These are young martial artists. And of course, the martial arts, so good for developing character, stability. And they help with that art of learning how to learn, the study of oneself, even as a young child. This is going to be fun. We'll start with WUSHU of the United States. And beside her will be Shimchenko Kamila of the Ukraine. The two will be performing as individuals. They're judged simultaneously. They can be a reference point for each other, but the judges, and I will be joined by an expert judge, coach, and competitor later on in the broadcast, Mr. Tony Sims. He will tell you that although as a judge, they are judged concurrently, they are judged as individuals. WUSHU. The American team has looked good already today. And by its very nature, much of the WUSHU that you will see begins soft and fluid, and then there will be moments of explosiveness. You see the focus on these two young athletes. When you see that wide shot, you'll see how different the two are. Shu dropped to her back, and there Kamila. Shimchenko Kamila. The two are expressing very, very different styles and flows, forms. The classification of, quote, other traditional styles may be a bit of a catch-all, but you'll see the difference between what they do, and it'll be beautiful to see, as two will take the carpet at a time. The leap and the land. You see fluidity, flexibility, strength. And there. You'll see their scores. And as we go, the rankings, you know, who is in first, second, third, that'll be shown. And it is important. It matters to these athletes and their teams, the individuals. But it's not the be-all and end-all. This is not pure sport. It's also an art. And there we see Liana Simit, also of the United States. See the flow as she moves, and then the power in the stance as she stops. On the wide shot, Keisha Azara in black, right here. A little powerhouse, too. And that softness and smoothness, almost elasticity as they move, and then the power is expressed just at the end. Ask anybody who, as a child, has a small slip, and then you regain your focus, and that is a big part of these expressive routines, is if something happens, you stay in the moment. And Leanna's doing a great job of doing exactly that. For anyone who trained martial arts as a child or who has a child in martial arts, they just know how great it is for their development and maturity. Oh, this little powerhouse. And they'll get their scores and they'll jockey for position, but there are 17 little martial artists here. Kisha Azara. Elise Young from the United States. The United States has an enormous team here, 173 competitors. You see the difference in the two styles. One fast and explosive, the other has that state of flow, that gentle movement. The contrast between the two is very, very exciting to watch. Akuz from Turkey, some fantastic martial arts from Turkey. Just a smooth flow, soft style here. And you'll see sometimes the artists will begin and end at different points, I should say. There is a minimum time limit to their form and a maximum time limit. So as long as they are over top of that minimum and within that maximum. And this little martial artist right here is absolutely in the zone. And she may be a little longer than her time limit, but a big smile and a great job. You see the difference. Fast, a little powerful, strong position, and here the flow. These are the diverse expressions of the Chinese martial arts, the traditional wushu. Elise Young, and a good score. And the judges will contextualize the scoring throughout the day, and it'll be a particular level of scoring for the young martial artists like we see here, and a much more challenging approach, judging-wise. I'll expect more from the older martial artist, Rachel Yang of the United States. Her style, a blend of the soft and the hard. Maria Alexandra completes hers. And they travel from so far and have practiced probably so long, some of them since they were tiny children. However, as you can see, some of them still are tiny children. But you see some beautiful expression from them, and that's what martial arts is. And it's something that we will talk about all weekend long, and we will come back to it as the 7th World Kung Fu Championships. The traditional WUSHU Championships is so much more than competition. We see martial artists, groups of them, all over beautiful Emeishan, in the parks and on the street, out front of hotels and in squares, in large groups sharing the martial arts. Shindi from India. That soft, expressive style. And there you see how different. Catherine Young of the United States, a much more acrobatic style. Kicking from the ground. With modern breakdance elements applied. Very athletic. In that low stance, showing power. You will recognize the Taolu, the non-combative forms. You see them in movies. You see stuntmen and martial arts movies really have developed from this style of expression of martial arts. And throughout this weekend, I will be joined by Tony Sims, who will give us much of the history, the background, and the branches of how these parts and veins of the Chinese martial arts tree, where they meet and where they spread. And what you'll find interesting as you watch it with curiosity is to compare the differences between the soft and the hard styles, between the explosive and the fluid, the grace and the power. All of those aspects. And there you see that acrobatic element. But all of these attributes and qualities are all part of the Chinese martial arts. Shindi is a score of 8.25. We have multiple judges at the side, and as they compare the two, Tony will get in detail as he comes in here shortly. He will break down for you how the judges view these, score these, and how they're sometimes split up between the two martial artists. There's Fiona Barnhart of the United States. That American team and the people with them, over 300 when you include the families and the friends and the supporters. There were a hotel and a half, literally, here in Emeishan. Kaylee Shook, also of the United States. You see up high onto her toes and then low in that powerful stance. Beautiful as the kick comes up and gracefully comes down into that low stance again. Very low, smooth and yet explosive. You see the focus. And you can see that as you watch it, the focus and the ability to zone in and commit, that level of concentration that these children develop. Just more of the aspects of the benefits of martial arts. And they await their scores, a job well done. Those 173 competitors and 300 plus Americans here as a group come from, they've been broken up into 11 different territories of the United States. And you see how quickly it keeps moving as we go from competitor to competitor. And they have to be ready. It's not just your ability to move and kick and jump, but your ability to express performance in general. There's no do-over, there's no timeout, there's no wait, I'm not ready. You must be ready to perform. And that aspect alone is a part of the development. And those stances really are a key element to keep your eye on. And just imagine how challenging that is on the lower body and the core. There you see that gentle, elastic fluidity and then that powerful expression at the end. And you just wait. After working.
How does this competition actually start?
Look at the little powerful expression from this young man. Kai Wen-yang. The two of them, very, very focused. And the audience enjoying these two gentlemen. And I am pleased to be joined now by my broadcast partner, a lifelong WUSHU practitioner, coach, competitor, judge. He is also my friend, and I'm happy to see him here from the United States. Flew in today. He will help us quench our curiosity about WUSHU and its culture, diversity, and history. Tony Sims, it's a pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Hi, Robin. Great to be here. Great to be here.
I know you literally got off a plane
just a couple of hours ago.
New York to Chengdu in a car, and now you're here at the World Traditional WUSHU Championships. And we are in men's Group A traditional. Men's, young men. Kai Wen-yang. And we move on to our next two.
Yeah, and it looks like they're doing traditional fists here.
Kyle Nguyen of the United States. So many American competitors. And after a lifetime in WUSHU, Tony, it takes you moments. You look at these styles and you can identify what part of the tree they're from.
Yeah, what's really interesting is to see these small, the little ones carrying the tradition of Chinese martial arts here. It looks like we actually have two different styles. We have an internal style going on with one boy, maybe? It's a hybrid, it looks like.
So some of these categories have been other traditional or kind of
Yes.
young catch-all, where we can see different types of expression within the same category.
Yeah. Some of the movements we can see for this young man are from the traditional Shaolin styles. Some of the movements even look like they were borrowed from or applied to Tai Chi forms, if you will see some of them, but a very traditional uh, fist form when you look at his stances. Oh, great.
Our viewers at home, some of them will look and just think he's adorable, but there's also a little power and expression and fluidity in this little
Yeah,
man.
he clearly understands the form, what he's supposed to be doing here. His intention is good. He's small, so he hasn't quite developed all of those skills yet, but this is a very complicated form for a small guy.
You see how much fun he seems to be having, which you've taught children for years. That's got to be an important mandatory element when they learn.
Oh, yeah. He understands closing his form out and the breathing, which was a big part of that form.
It must be incredible when you watch up close and see somebody start martial arts at literally 1 and 2 and 3 years old and then continue into adulthood and see them.
Yeah, this is a very special part of this competition when you can see so much of the generational aspect of Chinese martial arts, starting with these very young guys. This youngest kid looks like he couldn't be more than 7 years old. And the young man next to him may be somewhere between 8 and 10 years old. And then they have events with practitioners up well into their 60s. So it's a great time to see the beginnings of Chinese martial arts. As I said to you, Robin, this form that the smallest guy was doing is not an easy form to remember the sequence of the routine and the routine and the understanding of what he's trying to do with his breathing and his punching. And that's great to see, especially as we think about the growth of Chinese martial arts.
On some level, our brains are even more ready to learn at this age.
Sure. It looks like Kyle did well there. Great for him.
It is really interesting. And Yang did very well too.
So some of these styles, especially the style that we see on the carpet now, this is our youth Changchuan form that many of our viewers may recognize even from the World WUSHU Championships. This is the form that many of the smallest kids perform, and the other young man is doing a traditional long fist or Changchuan style that's in the style characteristic of the long stances, stretching of the fists, Robin, long drop stances, sweeps, a full sweep for him.
It's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
His kick to landing that stance as well, when he stuck that landing.
Sure. A beautiful cat stance there for him. That's a strong form for him.
In your decades now of seeing and teaching children, do they seem to be able to learn even quicker and develop even faster than they did a decade and 2 decades ago?
Well, the big difference is, yes, Robin, the bar has been pushed higher and higher. So we now understand that kids can learn these complex forms. They will grow into their understanding of the form as they mature, but they can understand the routines. And the great thing about those small kids is that very often they haven't developed big mistakes. So if we teach them properly, as you see again, a kid doing the youth compulsory,
Anthony Guan of the United States.
Changchuan form.
So these compulsory forms, as a group, sometimes we'll have young kids in an environment together, learn these together?
Yes, this form that Anthony is performing now, and it looks like our friend from Latvia, Maxim, is also performing one of the more traditional long fist styles as well. But the form that we saw Anthony doing is the same form that you'll see in the WUSHU Championships for youth. He's finishing his form now.
What I see when I see that finish there is full commitment to the performance.
Sure, he understands that while that form borrows, and there's Maxime again, showing us jump, snap, kick, and a beautiful horse stance for him. Anthony likely has been to or preparing for team trials with that same form, so he understands all of the dimensions that are necessary to really show good style. I think here we have Casey showing us Tongbei Chun and sort of white ape style. That slapping that you see is a different form of the power, and he'll circle his arms and take off there, and usually to a jump, and there he goes. So we actually have two styles there. We have Tongbei and then a traditional Berrien. Doing a great job.
It's impossible to tell, but in some cases, in a general case, how many times would a young man or girl have practiced these in the months leading up to this?
Oh, wow, hundreds, Robin. These forms, the routines that they are doing are no different than routines that you see adult practitioners engaged in. And so typically those forms will have at least 4 sections with well over 100 movements in those forms. And so just in order to remember the routine, they will have practiced them, more than 100 times, but also to prepare them for competition where they're focusing on their martial arts intention, strength, endurance, to be able to show a great form for the entire time.
They both do well.
Looks like we have a young man perhaps doing a tiger style or leopard style there on the,
Kia Namaki of the United States. I believe we have a young Egyptian boy, Omar, sharing the
Let's see if we can see what Omar is showing the youth compulsory Changchuan form. So we have 2 different styles.
Oh.
Yeah, he's showing the same form that we saw a little bit earlier with Anthony. And
able, actually. Omar is not moved from the competition at the last moment. I'm also shocked, especially with the young ones. They're focused. There's no do-over. There's no timeout. There's no I'm not ready. They have to take to the carpet and perform at this level under this pressure.
And that's what I mean about how many times they have practiced this form. What they likely haven't done, Robin, is practice. Many of them may not have a carpet like this in their school. So practicing and then practicing in front of this international audience with all eyes on you on the carpet is a different dimension of their training. But it's one of the only ways that they actually develop this sort of competitive spirit and practice with what it's like to go on a big stage, big international stage to perform.
Even self-confidence, just in general. You know, many of us adults are afraid of public speaking, of the most basic being in front of other human beings. These young men and women come here and perform this.
Well, a lot of people don't understand what you just mentioned, Robin, which is an important part. Here we have someone from the Republic of South Africa. Great to see the world diversity of Chinese martial arts. For practicing is one thing. Another aspect is actually going to compete. So in addition to the element of understanding, as we see this young man doing bagua here, as we see the competitor going out to prepare to show his form, they also understand now the importance of showing their form for judges, not just practicing for themselves. You don't develop that understanding. You don't develop that understanding unless you've actually been to competition. So experienced coaches understand that this is an important part of development, especially for kids, dealing with nerves, dealing with fear, and going out there and overcoming those, sometimes having challenging experiences there, but growing from all of those experiences.
And getting the chance, really, the gift of being able to do that so young, it'll make so many things easier in your life moving ahead.
Sure. These kids know what it's like at this age then to go up and engage in public speaking. You see, especially some of the small kids, when we said they have very complex forms, you see them pause a little bit for memory, and then you see them move right through their form. It just comes back to them. So those are those learning moments that occur right there on the carpet with you.
In truth, for our viewers at home, we don't want to be thinking in performance. We want to allow our memory and what we've trained our body to do to just freely flow.
Sure, all of that is what we hoped would happen. All of that is what we hoped would happen in practice, so that by the time they come here, you just see execution. We see Jamie from the Republic of South Africa.
As you mentioned, with the South African performers, we have athletes from all over the world.
This is our girls division.
And again, that catch-all concept of other types of traditional. So we'll see, even within the two performers on the carpet, we'll see very different styles.
Sure. This is a long fist style that you see Michelle Yeung from Hong Kong performing lots of slap kicks and long movements, but also with Ditang in the form. And Ditang is the ground fighting. You see her and the other young lady from Malaysia, it looks like, maybe performing a tiger style as well. But it looks like there are praying mantis elements in the form too.
And so a form that is a hybrid of different elements like that, this will be a form created by, somebody who came before her, or her and her teacher?
Yes. Often the form that we saw the young lady from Hong Kong, that was clearly an optional form. Sometimes we will see the very old traditional forms, but when you see this kind of nandu and these other techniques put in the form, they typically are forms that have been choreographed for them. But we will see forms, sort of older forms that are more traditional in nature, and they don't, you won't see as many of those acrobatic movements in those forms. When you see what's called a traditional ground fighting form, almost all of the techniques will be ground fighting techniques, and I'll let you know when we see one that's entirely ground fighting.
Last time you were at the traditional championships, you were a competitor.
Yes, I competed in double weapon style, shuanggo, hook swords, and then also in Tongbei Chuan.
Our viewers, in the sessions tomorrow and the next day, day 2 and 3, you will see a multitude of weapons, traditional and other weapons that you may never have seen before.
You notice here the long stances and long and extensions on the punches, and you know that you're in a long fist style.
That little flow between sides there, that was something you and I were talking about, and you have educated people on it, that elastic softness until that moment of strike.
Yeah, this is something that is very characteristic of many, many Chinese martial arts styles, that you call it elasticity, but as you look across the styles, even when they are just moving on straight lines, you very often will see coiling and power coming from the waist and from the stances. So you will see this generation, Chinese martial arts, one of the strong principles is the rooting or the grounding of the feet. And you will see that power generate up into coiling in the waist and exploding out through the hands.
When people see a lot of Western combat, they see a little more rigid, a little more always engaged type of style, but science really clearly shows that staying soft until that moment of impact is the best way to generate power.
Sure, and we'll see, you can actually see that with your opponents, your competitors, that understand that distribution of the power.
Malahova of Latvia. It's fascinating as we look at the body types too. And in some cases, they will have just ended up, Ling from Taipei, they will just ended up with a style that was near their home or that a family member trained, not necessarily one that was custom made for their body type.
Right.
And yet you will see the differences in how the body types express the styles.
Well, you'll see very often for competition especially, but even for some of the coaches that have depth in their training, they will have their practitioners learn a style that is suited to their body type. But the styles are open and people can learn styles and grow in that style. That's how I began studying Tongbei Chuan, in addition to liking the form, wanting to develop this kind of power for someone who had fairly tight shoulders. I wanted, Tongbei Chuan uses fast sweeping motions of the arms, and I wanted to improve that area of my martial training.
So you migrate to, I mean, that is truly what it is to be a great studier of self in a martial arts, as you move towards sometimes explore your weaknesses and find ways to make them become strengths.
Sure, I had studied traditional Southern styles for a very long time and wanted to really move into learning some of the other styles that also help to shape your muscles and your martial arts technique in different ways.
Tony, for our viewers, they'll see sometimes one will begin and they'll begin at the same time, but one will end earlier than the other. Why is that?
Well, these forms, again, are not compulsory forms, so the forms can have a different number of movements. Some of the styles, as we've pointed out, we have two competitors on the carpet. They could be doing very different styles, but especially this whole notion of the routines having different techniques means that one form or one routine may not have as many movements as another, or there are differences in flow of the form, and that makes a difference. And just to your point, we have one opponent that's finished much sooner than the other.
Both of these young ladies are Americans, but they're quite different. We found that as we started to explore the 173 martial artists here representing the United States, they're from different areas of the country, so they have different backgrounds and different trainings and different experience.
Sure, especially when we talk about traditional Chinese martial arts, there are so many different styles of Chinese martial arts, and the beauty of the World Kungfu Championships is that you actually have an opportunity to see such a variety of styles.
I was mentioning to our viewers before you sat down, as you look around the city, when you have 3,000 martial artists in a small city like this, you see people practicing and sharing wushu all over in parks and in parking lots and on the street. It's really been an incredible thing to see.
Well, and as the competition allows, of course, when those competitors are nervous and preparing to go on the floor, it's a little bit different. But as the competition allows, they also have the exchange of technique and martial arts skill that even sort of extends beyond language barriers. So the one thing that the practitioners have in common is Chinese martial arts. So even if they don't understand the language, they can show the technique and practice the technique, which is a fantastic way of building some of those bridges. So here we have two competitors, I believe both from the USA. One of them is doing traditional Changchuan form. This is an older compulsory version in the pink. And then we have someone, another competitor, doing very traditional Shaolin style, dressed in traditional Shaolin clothing.
And later on today, as part of our session, we will have some Shaolin Chuan competition as a whole. But here in the open or other types of traditional, we'll see some Shaolin within this.
Exactly, Robin. We have finished to the compulsory form. And again, this compulsory form qualifies because it is taken from traditional Changchuan movements. Jump front kick into tornado kick.
And when you have judged Taolu at this level, the judging for an 8-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 30, somebody who's been practicing for 20 years, is there a sliding scale of how hard or how seriously you judge them?
Well, when you are judging according to when you're judging according to rules that look at the martial intent, look at the clarity of the stances. Here we see Tongbei Chuan on one side and traditional long fist Chang Chuan on the other side. So there's the slapping motions that I told you, and you'll see characteristic jumping kicks, continuous flow of the arms. Robin, good martial technique is good martial technique, whether the person was 7 years old or 6 years old or 16 years old. There is, at these competitions, you might have competitors who are 30 years old but have only studied for a year. So this competition, as a celebration of Chinese martial arts, recognizes this, and the tournament is structured in a way that allows people to come and both enjoy and grow. There are competitions that will separate by age division. At the international level, we separate into youth or children and adults. But then for those children, there's a standard that's excellence for those children. There's a standard for adults. But we still will have children competing against children, adults competing against adults. Some other local competitions, you will have what you call a beginner and an intermediate and an advanced division, and that's where you get into some of the differences that you've mentioned. But here, they're not, the idea at the international level is if you have come to international competition, you're coming to international competition. The only distinction is your form, the style, and whether you are in a youth division or an adult division. Here, the young lady from Sri Lanka, again doing long fist form, the old compulsory long fist form. Years ago, adult competitors, performed this form at the World Championship. Now it's part of the youth competition, and we see this other young lady from the USA, Aya. She is performing another long fist form.
There's a beauty that you see in this long fist form that you see in very few martial arts outside of China, where that reach, that strength in the reach is expressed.
Yeah, this is especially characteristic of long fist, where you see much longer movements, much longer technique, much lower stances. Both young women doing long fist styles, so the arms looked very similar in terms of the execution of the technique.
And as you can imagine, in a martial environment, in a combative environment, you can strike from distance. With your stance and with the reach of that long fist, you can strike from a distance that somebody not trained in long fist might not be able to reach you.
Yeah, this is what is great about seeing the variety. We have a huge variation in Chinese martial arts style. You'll have close-in fighting styles, or short styles, and then you'll have long fist styles. Yes.
And a master of both would be able to choose from where they could strike. But if you were not a master of long fist, if you were not familiar with striking at distance, you would be at a disadvantage unless you were able to close that distance.
Sure, and what we see in the forms here, we have a practitioner from Russia, and we know that we've had some very strong, the growth of WUSHU in Russia, both in terms of the World WUSHU Championships and their presence here at the traditional championships. So it looks like we may have someone from Estonia and also from Russia here. Let's see if they're still in this other Changchuan style, if they have similar styles or if they'll be very different.
You and I worked together in Kazan, Russia, only, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, just about 6 weeks ago.
The World WUSHU Championships, and the Russians were very strong.
Yeah.
You talk about intent.
Sure.
I can feel her intent. I love seeing the two performers together, especially when there's a difference in the style, but also in the physicality.
Yeah, both of these competitors showing us really great martial arts here, but two very different body types.
What is that reach up there?
Sometimes you will see when the practitioners, you'll see this, especially the grip in eagle claw a lot.
Is there a lot of WUSHU in Estonia?
You know, Robin, I've never been to Estonia, but from the looks at it, there's some
quality.
There's some good teachers there, so.
We'll see, yeah, there's that eagle claw that you mentioned. These are the little details that we will learn about, we'll be curious about, and Tony will help us find these details. And we see the ranking there throughout. You know, we will have winners, we will have people in the top 10%, in the middle percent, and they'll celebrate those victories, but it's about so much more than that, and that's been the real pleasure to feel and experience here at the World Traditionals.
Sure, and again, here we have one young man practicing from Brazil, showing this mantis, and another competitor on the carpet showing Tongbei Chuan.
And these two who will share the carpet here may never have met. Hopefully they become friends, as that is a part of the championships. But what are the chances that they would cross or have to alter their movement to avoid contact?
Well, you know, that's interesting, Robin, because this form, particularly Tongbei, uses many aspects of the carpet. So I think these competitors have done a great job of staying out of each other's way, because as I mentioned to you earlier, that carpet is a huge investment. Also, a lot of practitioners, unless you have that much space in your school, you don't have such a big international competition carpet in your training facility. So there are some places that they train in large gymnasiums and they might have 2 carpets there. For those folks, they are used to practicing on the carpet with other competitors there on the carpet. But probably what's helped is for many of these practitioners who have been practicing in their school with other people practicing nearby, they have a sense of managing their space and distance a lot better.
And that awareness of where you are in space is a part of martial awareness. But to be exposed to it for the first time on a mat with somebody who you don't know where they're moving, it really, and what would a good competitor do? Just find the way to subtly alter their path?
Sure, that's what we see the boys doing now. For example, actually both of these boys are showing forms that are designed to use the entire carpet. So what will happen for them is you'll see them following in each other's path. They're both going to make their way over to the corner for the next technique, and then they make it to this corner, and then they have to make it across the diagonal for the carpet before they start to come in the other direction. This young man from Sri Lanka is going to use the entire carpet to go to the other side, and his partner will have to do the same movements and avoid each other.
And they're doing a very nice job of that.
They are. It's a little bit easier for them when they're doing the same form because they have a sense of where they're going.
Yeah, and they know the path that the other is going, although you see them, their feet are passing fairly close together.
Well, he's about to finish as he goes in the corner for a back sweep and finish the form, but he still has his butterfly to do. Going to the same corner, though. This form was a a contemporary adult form, and it's now one of the compulsory forms for the middle age group in the youth competition.
And that's something.
But before it was an adult compulsory WUSHU World Championship compulsory form.
That is something that you see in all types of performance, because at one time the quad in figure skating it was nearly, rarely done, and now it is standard for a teenager.
Yes, and that's what I mean about the bar being raised. So these kids are practicing this form now. By the time, if they were fortunate enough to make it on their country teams, by that time they will have much more experience with that form.
2 young Americans here, Alan Tong, in the
traditional Shaolin form.
And later, as I mentioned, we will see the Shaolin Chuan. Will they all be wearing the traditional, or is that an option, or is it mandatory when you do the Shaolin?
It's not mandatory, but many of the traditional schools use this now. So we have a young man from Brussels, Erickson from Brussels, again showing the form that we just saw before, the old compulsory long fist form. At this competition, which you've realized, Robin, what happens is if they don't have enough competitors in a certain bracket, they will move them to other. So it really allows people to still be a part of the competition because of the celebration of the variety of Chinese martial arts, without saying, oh, your category is closed, sorry, you won't have a competition. So this is a great aspect of the WUSHU World Championships. It does make it more challenging for them because they have to figure out where should we put your style or...
Yeah, I think for the viewer, it's very exciting, and it shows the diversity, because we will be able to see Shaolin and Shaolin on the carpet together at points.
Sure.
But then we'll see this variety, and that's where you really, I know, celebrating the diversity of the history and the development of the Chinese martial arts is a big part of it, and you really get to see that when you put the two young men like this who are doing completely different styles.
This is what creates an incredible learning forum for not only the young martial artists, but if you've been in a school and everyone practices the same style, you can come to a competition like this and see so many different styles.
You see strength here right away by the Japanese artist.
He's practicing Tongbei Chuan.
And grace. And what are the attributes, or what are the little differences with Tongbei Chuan?
Again, you see this generation of the power coming through the shoulders, the slapping movements, open palms. You'll see some fists, but for the most part, it's open palm. But the other part is that Tongbei Chuan is a style that also conditions your body. So you will see the competitors slapping their bodies with their hands. So it's one of those styles that's also sort of toughening you as you practice executing the techniques. You, with Tongbei, as we just saw, you'll see a lot of jumping up and down movements.
In some kinds of different martial arts that have traveled around, particularly out west, the forms have started to fade away from the classes. You don't see that in some, over the last decade, they started to take the forms away, but you see how much not only it develops with memory and choreography and movement and all of those things, but it strengthens the body and it develops all of these different attributes.
Well, this is characteristic of Chinese martial arts. You won't see the forms disappear, and because they recognize just what you've mentioned, that the forms train a lot of different things, especially training endurance. We see someone and it looks like he's might be doing one of these traditional forms that has multiple animal styles in the form. And you can see the exertion of power for him.
I love his intensity.
So these forms help to develop incredible amount of both strength and aerobic and anaerobic capacity in the practitioners.
The Russian Titov. And he has a very tall style here.
But showing us good execution of that explosive power at the end.
The young man from Taipei is very intense. You can feel his passion. And tell our viewers about the differences in what they're wearing between the long sleeves and the no sleeves.
Well, traditionally, especially for the practitioner that we saw doing a Southern style, you will see the sleeveless garments showing off the movement with the arms. The long sleeve of the other uniforms that you'll see allow you also notice this competitor, the competitor from Taipei has a sash on, whereas the other one did not have a sash on this uniform, allows the judges to look at his coiling movement, some for aesthetics and some for practicality. Traditionally, you'll see a lot of the Southern stylists with sashes on, both to support their organs and their back because of there's a little detang movement off the head.
Carlos Vera of Mexico.
Yeah.
There's a very acrobatic and almost breakdancing, modern type of style.
Well, this is what I mentioned to you about this ditang. All of the movements are these kicks and then falling to the floor technique. Actually, maybe both of them.
Yeah.
So I think we've moved into matching the practitioners who are doing more ditang-oriented forms.
It could be a coincidence as they are still categorized in the other traditional. Vera of Mexico and Wong of the United States.
Yeah.
But
Vera's form is definitely more ditang. Wong's form is not, although we saw those movements in the form. Alex, is it Ryan Wong?
Ryan
yeah,
Wong,
Ryan
yes,
Wong.
Carlos Vera. We, in Russia...
This is typical of ditang, this movement on the head. Usually you will see it without the hands or arms.
And that is where he would progress to.
Yep.
We got to know in Russia some of the Mexican team, and they're a young team in WUSHU, but passionate.
Absolutely.
Some good support for Ryan Wong of the United States. Quite beautiful, powerful, but fluid. Landed on that 1 foot, and there, how's that landing?
Good landing. The landing on the 1 foot is in contemporary WUSHU forms, it earns a certain level of difficulty for the technique. So he's practicing a higher level of difficulty than if he had landed on 2 feet.
And it was the kicking foot that he landed on as well, which even just if you imagine how challenging that is to stick. We will have a few more from the International Men's Group B, the other traditional. There's Cheyenne of France. I believe we will have another athlete from Taipei join him. Ethan Dancho of the United States.
Maybe they'll show some highlights of Ethan. I'm not exactly sure. This is the youth compulsory form, long fist, and there's Ethan with his butterfly twist and a second butterfly twist. He went out of the boundary.
And that would be held against him in the scoring?
Typically it is, because they need to stay within the white lines on the carpet. However, that's usually when you only have one competitor on, so that might not be as strict given that they have to avoid another competitor at times. Rice from France.
I know you've literally been in China for a few mere hours, but did you get a chance to chat with the judges?
A few of the judges, I had a chance only to say hello to them before coming over.
And the world of judging evolves in its own way in comprehension and ideas and assessment, doesn't it?
Sure. Here in the World Kungfu Championships, the judging of the forms, there is a difference. While they still look for some of these same qualities in other international competitions, what they're looking for here, speed, power, fluency, and also martial arts intent.
Two Americans here.
This is a Nanchuan form, southern fist form that we saw from our athlete in the red uniform.
This young man in the purple here, we spoke with him earlier, and he said that his parents always wanted him to pursue WUSHU. And when his mother passed away, she made his father promise that he would study. You can see he loves it now. You can see it in his expression.
We probably have a rich encyclopedia of stories from practitioners and how they came to practice and love the practice of Chinese WUSHU.
It has been completely full to the rafters from first thing this morning, even yesterday as they were getting a chance to practice on the carpet. It's been full in here.
As a person who regularly goes to international WUSHU competitions, and here we have someone showing us drunken style. Min Tai from the USA showing drunken style. Characteristic here of movements that are both off balance, striking, giving the impression of being intoxicated, but being able to strike. This, you will typically see some tumbling in this style. And we just saw him about to go into a butterfly movement. And Cameron from Republic of South Africa looks like he just showed us compulsory form. There's some of the tumbling that I mentioned, and usually crawling up on the body. Sometimes you'll see the competitor do it without using his hands at all.
And for people who have watched martial arts movies and gathered small pieces of history from there, it feels like this was developed by observing drunken behavior and creating a martial art. Is there some truth to that?
Absolutely. Many of the traditional styles, especially some of the animal styles that we see, were developed from practitioners mimicking some of the fighting movements and other movements that they saw. We saw earlier opponents who were performing monkey style and imitating the movements of the monkey, both in capturing the flavor of the movement for the monkey, but also some of the adapting those to strikes, kicks and strikes and evasive techniques. So you see that with mantis, you see it with tiger. There's even a horse style, Robin, but you'll see it in many of the various styles. Crane style, you'll see the hand movements mimicking the beak of the crane. You'll see the blocking and evasive techniques of those styles. Drunken style, same way. The spirit of the form is of someone who's intoxicated and off balance. But the idea is learning to strike and evade with a very different rhythm and sense of balance.
In combat in general, different is good. Unfamiliar can be very, very powerful. It's another young man from Taipei.
With a, you see his uniform is a traditional Southern style form, and that's what he's showing. This style form we call Nanchuan.
And when you see a form like the young man from Taipei, and you see all these hand movements, some will represent blocks, some will represent strikes. In learning the form, the young man should know to differentiate the meaning of these movements.
Yes, and typically in Kung Fu and traditional styles, the students will definitely learn that as part of learning. Many of the basic movements that they'll learn help them to understand that before they ever get to such a complex routine.
just watching the feet sometimes, or the connection to the ground is so fascinating. The young man in black, sometimes he's light, sometimes he's heavy on the ground, sometimes he's tiptoeing, other times he plants. Just watching the feet alone can be hypnotic.
Well, footwork is an essential part of Chinese martial arts. So as you look throughout all of these styles, Robin, you will see in many ways the quality of the form starts with being able to look at their footwork and the quality of the footwork.
And then comes up through the stance, and then through the core. It has been so enjoyable to be able to see, and in context, we see, there you see the emotion, good or bad.
Sure.
It's an emotional thing to go and express yourself like this in this incredibly full room in China. As a young man, it's moving.
Well, for some of the competitors, it might be their first time on the international world stage, and maybe they have been a really strong competitor back in their country, in their local competition, and now they come to international world championships, World Kungfu Championships, with fantastic martial artists from all over, and it can be sobering for some of our competitors, but it's also a great experience for them to have this feeling of there's a place that I can improve, and I saw kids my age and they were so great and I want to do better.
And personal growth is at the very root of what it is to be a martial artist, and to get the chance, as you say, to be able to see where you could go with more work and commitment.
Well, this is one of the beauties of coming to competition. So in Chinese martial arts, you're always competing against yourself and raising the bar for yourself. When you come to have share the carpet or watch other people compete, for sure some people are watching how fast the arms are of this young man from Turkey in his Tongbei. What are the things that, when I look back at my form, where are areas that I can improve?
There's a real similarity. I can't tell, you will, if they are doing the same...
The same style. Slightly different form, but the same style.
Mm-hmm. And one man from Turkey, one man from the United States, but both connected through that branch of Chinese martial arts.
It looks like our Tongbei may be placed in traditional hand forms.
Wow, the speed of his hands, as you pointed out. And part of being able to come out and do your best is not being affected if you are competitor number 18 and you've watched people that you know are clearly performing in ways that you maybe haven't before.
Sure.
And still go out and be your best you.
Oh, he's in first place now. The young man that we just watched with Tongbei.
And I think that will complete that group. So would it be our last performer who will have ended up taking it.
Out of 26 competitors.
And to watch 24 come before you and know you have to outperform them and then successfully doing so, that is impressive.
So here is traditional hand form where one gentleman is practicing bagua, Xingyi bagua, and the other competitor is doing a traditional, it looks like a traditional Shaolin fist form.
There is a march to this style, bagua. And there's, you see the difference immediately.
This is a Nanchuan form he's showing.
Takes that strong, low horse stance. But there, the movement is almost marching at times here. But then down low, it's beautiful. Right there.
Yeah, well, he's walking a circle, and so this is characteristic of Bagua, those circles. If you watch from the beginning of the form, he's moving around circles. The Nanchuan form is very different. These are two very different styles on the carpet at the same time, so it shows you a huge contrast. And
especially as one's in white and one's in black. One is circular, one is linear.
That's right.
One is soft and one is hard. Some of those foundational concepts exist in martial arts from outside of China as well. Circle versus linear, soft versus hard.
Sure.
These are some of the ways that the human being can express combat.
Well, Chinese martial arts is very, very old and has influenced a lot of other styles throughout the country.
And there is an accepted argument in sort of global martial arts study that many of the other styles do end up diverging from the Chinese styles, which would make sense why a karate or some other martial arts, you would see some of those same foundational principles, hard and soft, circular and linear. Here we see linear and hard.
Yep. Nanchuan also.
And you see, even in the development of his body, how it's changed the shape of his body. You know, that is the body of a man who does a linear hard style.
Well, again, you asked me about this is maybe a Hongar style, which is a southern style. You asked me about the uniform, and now you see one of the reasons that they show this arm movement. They need a uniform that is practical for what they're doing.
To a degree, as you might imagine, if you're something in the nature of this hard expression develops the body, it's something you can show and would be physically intimidating, visually intimidating.
So again, you can see with competitors, what does the stance look like? What is the transition between stances? Doesn't matter what form you're showing, there still is a transition between the stances. There is a sense of balance as you move from low to high. These are the characteristics and quality of movement that the judges are scoring. Balance, coordination, fluency in the form.
Very graceful and fluid. Still power and that little regrip that we see.
Grab and push. Some of the movements in Chinese martial arts are easily identifiable, and some of them you have to practice Chinese martial arts to understand, oh, that flip of the wrist was actually circling out and grabbing someone's arm.
And sometimes when we see that, and we'll point it out when we see it again, that movement of the hand to grab or block and grab, will it sometimes simulate grabbing fabric as well, or typically the appendages, the arms and the legs?
Typically grabbing the wrist, because you wouldn't know whether someone has a long sleeve on or not, so the grip is to the person's joint. There's another, the hands look as if they're shaped for tiger claws.
There are moments where his hands are powerful, and other moments where they're very relaxed. It's elegant and powerful to see.
Powerful and vicious. He just showed us 2 pokes to the eye when his fingers were out. Again, this is a traditional Shaolin form.
And you mentioned that when there are too many of a particular competitor, they will be in these overflow catch-all, showcase them together. We will see a lot of Shaolin later today.
Yeah, it's both when there are For example, in this age category, if there weren't enough people to make a Tongbei division, they would have moved them to other. If there are not enough of competitors in that particular age grouping to make a Shaolin division, they'll move them to other. So it looks like that's what's happened. That's why we see such variety there.
And just in the first half of the evening session, we've seen 6 and 7-year-old boys and girls. We've seen men reaching up towards senior. Sometimes,
Sure.
you know, the contrast of styles within that grouping as well. This, you know, combination of backgrounds and ages and countries and so forth, I think somehow contributes to that sharing of ideas and culture and friendship that is a part of the traditional championships.
Well, sure. As I was saying earlier to you, for some of these practitioners, they might not have met other Hungar practitioners outside of their school, let alone from the Republic of South Africa. So we see the competition carpet, but our viewers see the competition carpet, but there's another warm-up area back there, and that's where people have an opportunity to meet and engage with each other.
And just right all around the city of Emeishan, in their hotels, you know, so, there are 6 and 7 different hotels here in the city that are full to the rafters with Chinese martial artists from around the world.
Sure, it's surprising. This event is very, very large, and just to have the capacity to support all of the competitors, spectators, team members that come along takes a lot.
In most of these hotels, they'll dine together and they'll share the space together after the competition at night. So to fully be immersed in what you love in another country, in the country of origin of what you study, it just must be an incredible gift.
Well, this location, especially for many of the Chinese martial artists that have heard about this area and even areas such as Shaolin that are the home or birthplace of so many of the styles, make for a very interesting competition experience.
For our viewers at home who would tour China, would get the chance to tour China, the food here is unbelievable too.
Well,
Sichuan,
Sichuan province is known for having incredible food.
Yeah.
So
Spicy.
So here's another close-in short style.
Senbaksa.
From Malaysia.
So, and what would be the familiar martial art or martial arts school where one could study this style? If you were, you know, in England or the United States or India, where could you study something like this? What would they call that school?
Well, you know, some people know of Wing Chun schools. Some people know short-range boxing, Nanchuan schools. So it really depends. And very often what has happened is someone who has practiced that style moved to that area, and that's where you can find this sort of short-range striking style.
There's some very simple concepts to the short-range style. Inside, fastest; outside, safest.
Well, you saw that it doesn't take up a lot of space with the form, whereas some of the other styles that we've seen have used the entire carpet.
If you imagine two people who did physically compete in a martial environment or in competition with that style, they're right in each other's range. They're right there.
Again, you see the short range style
strong and crisp. You talked about balance. Sometimes you just see a little adjustment, and you're right. For viewers, whether we're looking at grace or we're looking at power, both are hard to express balance. If you're overly focused on power, you may fall off balance. If you're too fluid, there is such a thing. It is really wild to watch, those foundational elements.
Well, the judges here also look for whether the form captures the spirit of that style. So when you have those fast sweeping styles where the movement is supposed to be long and up and down, they are looking to see, did your execution show the quality of that style? When it's Nanchuan and short and fast and furious, did you show that? So there is an element of the quality of movement that the judges look for.
And now we will move to the Shaolin Quan. We call it the men's group, but these are very small men, very young men.
Yeah, all showing the Shaolin Chuan, and that simply means Shaolin fist. So you'll see a lot of them showing a very similar form.
And when people think of Shaolin style, sometimes they'll think of Shaolin monks, celebrated in culture. Is that the origin, or is that the developmental stage?
No, these forms came out of Shaolin Temple. Some actually call them Shaolin boxing forms. So.
And in the Shaolin Temple, as they created and developed and perfected these styles, they were done for protection, but also to become a better human being, to explore yourself.
Protection and for health. The Shaolin styles were Shaolin martial arts. The origins of them were health rendering. And then there is the defense and protective element, combat element for the monks when they left the temple, as opposed to just practicing for physical development within the temple.
And when you say health, it's physical health, but it's also mental and emotional, spiritual health as well.
Oh, sure. That was a big aspect of Shaolin training.
Of course, as the first two, they will be ranked first and second.
Look at this big guy.
He's working on
his version of a split.
Yep. Young Mr. Pinedo from Bolivia. And just, you can imagine the work and how serious this young man takes his training at this age, and what that does for him, and what it will do to make a better human being and a better citizen.
Well, one of the things that's great about Chinese martial arts, and I was having a conversation with some of our hosts here, that Chinese martial arts really does build character, because it is not easy. So you have to struggle through. He has had to struggle through learning and trying to remember this sequence of movements and get huge rousing applause.
Tony, they're going to ask us for our performance of the day, and that one is in the running for me. And this young man, of course, performed exceptionally well, but then you see in the background the little tumbler behind him, Mr. Pinedo. But it is Carrel who moves into first. But they sure enjoyed Pinedo. And we move on. I believe
These both from Brazil, yes. Possibly even from the same school.
You can see the signature of their teacher on them.
Sure.
Brazil, is it safe to say, is emerging over time in WUSHU?
Oh, Brazil has, like so many countries, has had periods of just tremendous success and presence in Chinese martial arts, and both in Sanda and in Taolu. What you see here is also evidence of Brazil preparing for the Youth World Championships.
And the Youth World Championships are on alternating years of the WUSHU World Championships.
Of the Adult World Championships, right.
So,
So I believe they will be hosting the Youth World Championships.
And Brazil is a passionate martial arts and combat sport country.
Yes, we have just had the Adult World Championships in Kazan. So we would have the Youth World Championships on the following year. And you can rest assured that the kids from Brazil are working very hard so that they can have a good showing in there as host country.
And young Mr. Raphael from France.
So Nanchuan.
These youngsters from Taipei have all been quite intense. Again, perhaps we see the signature of their teacher.
Signature of their teacher, but we know in World Championships also Taipei is Taipei in our other World Championship competitions. Taipei is also one of the strong competition countries.
And strides off confidently.
Well, that's training. But this young man is showing us some great stances.
Great stuff.
Chen Yaozhou looks like is in second place.
I believe that wraps it up, so he will finish in second. And we will move to the International Men's Group B. So the teenage Shaolin Chuan.
Tunisia and France here.
Firas from Tunisia, the white top. And Mr. Lancelot from France in the back.
Firas is showing us really strong, impressive stance work. Looks like he's still going on his form.
Yeah, you mentioned the stance. You see that powerful low stance.
Now he's finished, yes.
And just soft right up until that final punch there. And there, that open hand style.
The style is very suited to Frias, his body type. Firas. camera experts giving great shots of the audience there. That's #1 ranking for him early on.
And of course, Lancelot starts at 2, with many more competitors to go. There will be 29 in the Group B Shaolin Xuan.
Goes to show you the depth around the world in Shaolin style. Lots of practitioners. You know, one of the early movies for Jet Li was Shaolin Temple, and there really has been an emergence of Shaolin practitioners who have gone out around the world from Shaolin to begin to open schools and spread even more Shaolin martial arts.
Will all of these styles be truly traditional styles, or will you see some of these, you know, young men and women alter them and develop into personalized versions, or will they be primarily traditional?
Traditionally, you will see what we see of the traditional styles are people who have studied traditional Shaolin. There are many, many hybrid styles that are already out there, but for most of what we see with Shaolin, there's enough diversity and variety in the Shaolin styles that have changes. Some of one of the long fist forms that practitioners showed earlier, Changchuan, or Chachuan, sorry. Those Chachuan forms have slight differences, but the body, the core of the form looks very similar. There's our friend earlier from, was it? Bolivia.
Young Mr. Pinedo.
Raul from, I believe this is Raul from Mexico. Raul's form looks like it may have been a routine that was developed as opposed to an old traditional form.
There is the Canadian. There are a few Canadians here. So when you say developed, it will take components and movements
choreographed. That's a great question, Robin. That all of the forms that we see, someone developed. But by developed, I meant that some of the forms were choreographed more recently than the traditional Shaolin forms.
And I suspect those things move through phases where, you know, true tradition will be something that you see much more of, and then interpretations of tradition and those will move in phases and waves of popularity or what's in vogue in competition.
Well, the beauty of the World Kungfu Championships is they don't have to use those waves of change in the same way, because these practitioners come from traditional styles. So it really is a celebration of tradition, which can mean a very old form that has not been changed.
Dan from the Netherlands. In Russia, I was starting to see, you of course have been deep in Chinese martial arts for much of your life, but I was noticing from Scandinavia, from Sweden and Norway, there were competitors more than I was expecting to see in Russia at the World WUSHU Championships. And we see the man from the Netherlands here, from that same region of the world.
WUSHU truly has an international presence. We see practitioners from Africa, practitioners from European countries, practitioners from Canada, from the US, from Latvia, from Mexico, from Argentina, from Italy. We really have Republic of South Africa here, Taipei, practitioners from so many corners of the world. This is the World Championships, but many of these countries have had national competitions. So
I believe we have 2 Americans here. There's Tyler. In the background, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Ian Bennett. Very different.
yeah, it looks like Ian is doing Nanchuan form. Maybe not. Maybe he's doing.
We had seen them all categorized as Shaolin,
Yeah.
but that may not be the case here. It may have started as a category of Shaolin and later expanded.
Well, it looks like he has. You do see Shaolin styles with what he just did, but it's possible that he has a competition form choreographed just for this competition.
The American team has been segmented into 11 different regions. So these two may never have met before this tournament, quite easily.
Well, when you have a team that's that large, that is common.
And in other cases, some of these could be friends for a decade, depending on how much they've traveled internationally and nationally. There you get some very beautiful height there. Just amortizes that potential energy as he touches the mat and springs back up into the air.
Tyler with an 8.45. And we already have our other Shaolin competitors on the floor. Kinjagaran from Kazakhstan and Jesse Martin from Germany.
And it may change, but how wide can these youth divisions spread, or the young divisions? But it couldn't be as much as 5 and 6 years between the competitors?
I believe that it's no more than 5 years. I believe that it's no more than 5 years. And typically at the younger stages, they don't want a 5-year-old competing with a 10-year-old.
Our audience here in the venue and at home, there's almost no time in between. You see
Sure.
them perform, and we see the very next, and that is for our entertainment, but also to allow this many competitors to come in a day and show their art.
This would take 3 to 4 times as long if the person were just one person on the carpet at a time.
I really enjoy seeing the multiple artists at the same time and seeing the difference. I mean, that is part of the true beauty of the Chinese martial arts, is its wide diversity. Especially in those open groups or those, quote, other groups.
Sure. Enrique from Mexico.
I believe this is the Turkish athlete.
Trevor from the USA.
was that block and grip you and I were discussing earlier. When I watch this style, I see linear blended beautifully with the circular. You know, we see the straight line attacks and blocks, and then we see the circular movement as well.
And that is not uncommon, Rob. The footwork traveling across the floor tends to be more linear. But the other movements, you'll even see them use angles, 45-degree angle.
Viewers can imagine there are 6 basic directions if you're moving straight, forward, backward, side, side, and an angle on splitting each of those. 8 directions, I'm sorry. But then once you start moving laterally, pivoting, and circling, it becomes just an almost unlimited amounts and directions that one can move.
Sure, which is one of the reasons why it can be very difficult for small children to learn the style.
To Adrian from Mexico. There are a few changes in the program, but I think we have a Bolivian martial artist with him. It appears to be an incredibly challenging style and fun, you know, like, and of course martial arts is supposed to be fun, not just for young people, but for everybody, but that looks fun.
I would agree, Robin.
When you're young, there's an element to your developing ego where the chance to impress your friends always is going to be somewhere in the back of your mind for some people.
Well, for him, for this practitioner, there are lots of faces in the audience that he doesn't know. And he's thinking about some of the places, as we just saw, that he struggled with.
In those moments of struggle, he seemed to do very well to not, worry about them, let them be in the past, stay in the present, and stay with his movements.
Well, he knows which movements, as we just saw, which movements were tough for him even before coming to competition. So.
And even that would be good training too, to not feel anxiety as you approach the ones that are tough for you, to allow them to just be. Another Bolivian martial artist, Leonardo. I think a Russian, Vladimir. It's Leonardo.
Vladimir from Russia. Can't recall if we saw him earlier this morning as well.
I don't believe so yet. And we will stay with the competitors to see their score, particularly for their friends and family and countrymen at home that are watching. But as we do, sometimes it will appear that their routines are short, but it's just they already begin as the others are waiting for their score.
Sure. This competition has a lot of moving parts, at least 6 carpets in play, maybe more.
It really is the choreography of not just, you watch individuals show what they did, but you see multiple judges and you see camera work and people, security, and to be able to pull off an event like this, just that in and of itself, what you don't see is incredible.
This is truly a test of being able to maintain your focus and stay in your zone for your competition at a very in a very active arena, even to the point that you are competing on the same carpet while another competitor is practicing next to you. So it really is a test of your focus and your ability to block out distractions.
And that's one of the natural things as you're training these martial arts, as you're training these forms. We talk about your body becomes stronger and your attributes become strengthened, but the true focus and concentration is a muscle that develops as well.
Well, Robin, one of the things that we see with these competitors is once they start their form, you look at their intention and focus, and it's pretty unwavering. You wouldn't know that they're in a stadium with hundreds of people around them. And that's a good observation of their sort of resilience and ability to block out distractions and stay on course.
Most people at home have had the experience in their life at one point or another. You're playing a sport, or you're doing homework, something very simple, and you feel like you're in the zone. That is that ideal slightly altered state of performance. And most of these competitors, especially the experienced ones, you see them sort of attain that state very quickly.
The nice thing about watching so much of the traditional Shaolin, Robin, is that you really do develop an appreciation for the style and the movement. Many of the movements that we see are similar to each other in the Shaolin style. So then it's a matter of how one practitioner executes that.
And if you do transfer it to, if you're a viewer and you're newer to WUSHU, you transfer it to something like gymnastics. There are sometimes the mandatory, the things that you must do, and those ones, the judges are very able to examine the differences between two competitors and what they do.
I just heard a roar go up, and it looks like William might have had a strong contingency here cheering for him to finish his form, and then it looks like we have Taipei and Russia, the Republic of South Africa up again, I'm sorry.
There's been a lot of South African competitors here today. First we get Frank Yu from the United States score, and then you're right, I think we will see South Africa versus Taipei. Sure. And yeah, you did see a large group there for William. And all of the Taipei competitors that we've seen today have had the same uniform.
Well, they're showing Nanchuan style, so that is a Nanchuan style uniform. This gentleman is showing traditional Changchuan short sleeve uniform. And
there's the young man from Taipei, finishing strong. There's Chen from Taipei, and behind him you see the South African. Raiden from the Republic of South Africa. Tall and long.
So Hidenori of Japan is up, and Gerard from France. Those are our last two competitors in Group 7, Robin?
Could still be 3. It is possible. We will see if a young Italian, oh yes, Michelle from Italy will be here with the young Japanese Hidenori. And then we will finish with the competitor from France after these two. I've noticed through a lot of these competitors from up very high to stances very, very low.
Absolutely, that is characteristic of this Shaolin long fist style, long fist in general. 3 levels of stances, high, medium, and low.
You can imagine how challenging. Just stand in a low stance or a medium stance for 20 seconds and you get fatigued depending on how much activity you do. These guys will be doing this for hours at a time, many times a week for years of their lives. So it'll be very natural to them. And as they extend through that jump and you see their torso move forward, what are we seeing there?
Well, especially one of the things that we're seeing is this practice of being airborne, and the form really increases this whole notion of power springing up, and also when they move, I tell my students it's like making a donut. When they move to kick their feet up, really elevating their body so that if someone was trying to sweep, they got out of the way from elevating their body. But it has a dual purpose of also showing great athleticism and being able to get up there and stay.
Yeah, it gives more and even more of an illusion of flight. And your body, your center of mass goes high up, and then as you bring your legs up even higher, you get that hang time, as it were. And here, there's a perfect example of what you said through the 3 stances.
Yes.
There's the middle stance, the low stance.
This one, the horse stance is the middle. We'll show you what the low stance is. But the front stance and horse stance, and also the cat stance. Well, he looks like he's finished. We'll see if he went to any drop stances. The drop stance will be the version of the low stance if we had a playback there.
In that cat stance, almost all of the weight comes onto that back leg. There's the forward, kind of a weight distribution in between. Now weight on the back leg, and that there.
Front leg is empty, yes. So as he awaits his score from France, number 1 ranking for that division.
Is it possible, or do you have an advantage being at the end? They've seen everything, there's none left to see?
Well, the form that you practiced is what you're taking out there. So might have a little bit of momentum.
You have the International Men's Group C, Shaolin Xuan, and we have a competitor from Brazil. So this is Group 8 of the afternoon session here on day 1.
Giovanni is there.
Giovanni from Brazil and Eugenio from Mexico. And we haven't seen this uniform today.
Now, this is another traditional Shaolin, this off-shoulder uniform, again showing that physicality, physical development, very typical. I have a similar uniform for Southern style, so you might see this with some of our other competitors.
So our first two from men's Group C. There are 30 competitors in Group C, and you will see 9 in Group D, and then some women's groups, and that will complete our afternoon session. They are moving fast today. We've seen so many. By the end of this afternoon, we will have seen over 150 competitors. We're more than halfway through, but much more to see here. That was Artem from the Ukraine.
With a good score that possibly will stand as a higher score as an 8.81.
Mahdi. 8.81 on its own is a high score today, and there we may see even better performances, but as you pointed out, that's a great start. Is that Jeffrey here from the United States? Great scores here. Strong performances here in Group C.
Well, Group C, they have the added benefit of the physical development to match some of the complex movements.
And at this age, which is very interesting, and Jeffrey Chon of the United States moves to number 9.1.
Yeah.
Some of these grown men here, if we had seen them begin at 4 and 5 years old, like some of our competitors earlier today, they could be practicing martial arts for 25, 30 years of their life. And you see it in how some of these men are performing.
Yeah, this is a very competitive division and great Shaolin routines.
Ilya from Russia. Quick. You're seeing those movements through the heights of the stances. Babenko.
Russia and Kazakhstan. So again, as you say, Robin, with so much going on, looks like the forms were very short, but in actuality, we sometimes will have an opportunity to see a playback because the competitors started early and receiving their scores.
Yeah, even now, as we see those scores, our next two competitors are just beginning. You see them on the wide shot there. I think we have a Russian. Yes, Igor.
Igor.
I think Vicente. We've seen 9s already in this group. Yep, Vicente. See the bladed hands. Some of these forms through the Shaolin groups, we see much more kicks from some than others.
Sure. The forms, there are slight variations in the form, but if you notice, all of these Shaolin styles will have lots of horse stances there, dropping to front stance, this section where they move forward, jumping and kicking.
Vicente has shown his weapons in many different ways, with the blade of the fingers, with the back of the hand. In his style here, or in his performance, we've seen many different hand positions to strike with and block with.
Sure.
And 9s still. So, very competitive group here. International Men's Group C, Shaolin Xuan. Vicente, 8.82.
Ufandu from Nigeria, it looks like, and also Ali Akbar from Iran.
There's that very low stance. Yes, it is.
Yeah, that sitting stance is the low stance. The front stance and horse stance are the mid-range stance.
Much more in the higher up stance there, that middle level. I have noticed over yesterday's practice day and today how many people have, whether they were from past experience or not, how many friends people are making with competitors from other countries. And we keep moving. Celebration here for sure. Matthew of Russia.
Again, this large division is a testament to just how popular Shaolin boxing. There's really been this emergence of Shaolin boxing around the world.
It feels very accessible, and you feel the difference between, the elite, some of the athletes who've been scoring in the 9s, and then the ones scoring the 8s, still performing the same artistry, but the development and the skill development over time, you can see the difference.
Well, again, the difference that you're looking for is the footwork. You're looking for the hand speed. You're looking for the stability, balance, transitions, moving across the floor.
Does the French team happy with that? Kenta from Japan.
Showing a very impressive, if he continues with this, you can expect that he might even have a 9 coming out. And Ivan from Bolivia.
From that low to that butterfly. And although he moves very nicely, it feels like he doesn't have the amount of years of WUSHU as Kenta of Japan, perhaps. Maybe we'll compare their scores. That uniform appears very traditional, and let's see if we see a 9.
I would not at all be surprised if we didn't see it. Oh, close. 8.85. And 8.69.
Let's see. French.
Good Nicholas from France.
Claudio from Italy. Strong landing. It's an athletic nature to how Claudio is showing this form.
It is. The judges will look to see whether the execution of power is correct, but he definitely had great intention and focus throughout his form. And lots of cheering from Italy for him. 8.80 for him.
Martin Lee. The difference, the movements are the same, but his interpretation of them is slightly different. Wilson. Graceful.
17号王万秀，最后得分8.65分。18号孙世林，最后得分。
I actually learned this form many years ago, Robin, this traditional Shaolin form from a practitioner who grew up and studied in Shaolin, one of the monks who ended up coming to the U.S. to teach.
It does, you can see it, it looks strong and
22号余秋实，最后得分8.94分。
Martin 8.81.
23号李玉芝，最后得分23号24分。
8.74, both did very well.
24号
Very different.
Yes.
最后得分8.78分。25号李娟芳，
Different in the execution of the movements.
26号陆克莲，最后得分8.63分。27号
Part of that is what we also call someone's flavor, that each individual has their own rhythm and flavor, but there's a quality of the form that you still should capture.
28号韩德荣，最后得分8.95
Lauren
分。
from,
29号王树
I
渊，
believe, Romania, Lana.
33分。
Yeah.
30号陈继
For a judge, if two were to perform both extremely well in their foundation, but with different flavors, there'd be a subjective nature to the judging that would have to play a part.
There is quality to the judging in terms of how they find the execution of the movement for individuals. So we talked about balance, speed, control, all of these things that they are judging.
But for you as a judge, all else being equal, and the few things that are different is that individuality. At this point, you're studying art and expression more than technique itself, if all technique is equal.
Well,
it's like looking at a painting.
Except that here, you really do look at distinctions between the explosive power. You look at distinctions in the footwork. You look at distinctions of whether the feet look rooted and grounded versus simply in the right space.
Fabrício Osaku of Brazil.
So, for example, there are people that will show a sweep, and their sweep looks, the quality of their sweep is faster and smoother than someone else's sweep.
But under a scenario in which one sweep is faster and smoother, but slightly off balance, the other one ever so slower, not as smooth but more in balance. It must be just a high level of expertise for the judges themselves, especially over years and years of being able to compare. It's the Brazilian.
And in many ways, Robin, the awarding and the medaling for this event that's different than the others is a reflection of this notion that you can have multiple gold medalists, multiple silver medalists.
I think that is part of what we've talked about, that nature of competition still being very present, but not being the be-all, end-all. That there's so much more to be gained. I think by softening or loosening the rein on first, second, and third to a small degree, it allows more sharing and exploration and examining of culture and history.
Well, we still see this young man, Benny, for example. Benny went down into a sit stance, but he lost his balance in the sit stance. So it doesn't matter whether his form is more creative, artistically on the floor. If he lost his balance, that's a deduction from quality of movement. Balance.
And as we watch the younger competitors today, that's what you'd focus on in their development, is those foundational things,
Sure.
Strength, balance.
And for some, there's one time, like you said, to do the form. One of the reasons that you see opponents not starting over is a huge deduction to start over. So it's better for them to take the break mentally and regroup while they're trying to remember the next movement than to start the form all over again.
Everton of Brazil. Let's see what we have here. Antonio of Italy. See real expressions of his strength here. Some with that traditional uniform, the off-the-shoulder uniform, is it a coincidence that they're often physically quite strong, or does that work in tandem in the selecting of the uniform with their other expressions?
can be a combination of both. This style develops your musculature around your shoulders and your arms. And so there are, I remember Robin giving this uniform to a teenager and him saying, I'm too skinny to wear this. So there is something to be said about practitioners who wear this uniform being able to embrace the quality of the uniform looking good on them.
Those, I believe, are our final two Shaolin Chuan male. No, we do have, of course, the men's group D, a smaller group of the Shaolin Chuan. There are some natural things that happen as we age. You know, you will lose some amount of muscle mass over time as you get older. But of course, training the martial arts will either slow that or really, really delay that.
Well, you certainly can see that with this age group. Kinsuke from Japan, not sure. And our other competitor is Saeed from Iran.
Yes, these men, you know, near their senior citizen years, you see this real strength. And as we spoke earlier today to some, you know, of the senior gentlemen who were long-time practitioners, they felt it really kept flexibility and fluidity in their joints as well.
This is another characteristic of Chinese martial arts and the routines, and that's what I meant about the routines sort of remaining, that the routines in and of themselves help to continue to challenge flexibility, coordination, and as long as they continue to practice those forms, they continue to develop in those areas.
That is a very athletic man right there. For people who are martial artists already, that's what they have to look forward to. But even if somebody in their 40s or 50s begins martial arts, they will get some of those benefits very, very rapidly.
It's all a matter of how that individual trains and how their teacher customizes coaching so that they can continue to grow in those areas. Is our practitioner Brendan from the Republic of South Africa? Yes, Brendan.
That's, I believe, our Russian competitor, Andre there, and Brennan, I believe, is in the black.
Is in the black?
Yes. And our competitor in the gray does have a rather Russian flavor to his expression, that strength.
No, Fernando from Argentina. That's Fernando from Argentina, so we had a little bit of a change there.
Andre in the gray is our Russian competitor. And here's our Argentinian gentleman. And sometimes even from the course of releasing our rundown of competitors, there will be an injury or something will change and one will drop out. But throughout the day, we have seen a 95% at least competition rate. It's a long way to come. And there is the Russian, strong and flexible. Fun to watch. He does move into first for now. You can't get much further away from this region of China than Argentina.
Sure, and it looks like we may have had some competitors. Oh, we do have them on the floor.
French competitor, Sumash Aiton. And it may be another Argentinian.
Well, I think our graphics friends will help us.
And it may be Sumash alone right. No, you do see in the back, maybe it is the man from Argentina. Yes, it is. Fernando from Argentina, the Argentinian. And off camera, you don't see him, but the head of the Mexican WUSHU Association is waving at us. He is the happiest man that I've met here at the World Traditionals as well as at the World WUSHU Championships. Proud of his Mexican team. And we've seen a few of them today, and we will continue to see them throughout the competition. The French team is a large group as well, and vocal.
Well, it's one of the things, Robin, that eases some of those nerves when you know that you have a large contingency, and the layout of this competition and the sheer size means that instead of your competitors your teammates being far away, they really are within just a few feet from the carpet. And
there you saw moments where to stay in that state is so challenging. We take it for granted as we watch these competitors, but to focus in at that level, there are moments where you can draw that blank. You know, the pressure, or inexperience, but Sumash from France should take pride in coming here, traveling all this way, and getting up on the carpet and expressing himself.
we have Albert from the Republic of South Africa. It looks like maybe Christopher Shepard didn't compete.
The South African team, again, I mean, we could say it about so many of them. There's a joy here in competition. There's a freedom that they have here. And you were telling me when we were in Russia how different the World Traditional Championships is, but to be here and experience it, you really feel it.
Yeah, it's quite a community of martial arts here in celebration of so many different styles, and I think we've moved into our women's division.
We have a couple of women's divisions to wrap up a great day one here. Women's Group B, Shaolin Xuan. I believe we have an American and a German. There's Nina from the United States. I hope to join you in one capacity or another at some point, Tony, at the American Championships, because I've seen just in the United States athletes alone how different they all are.
Yeah, and the same for many of the other countries. The traditional competitions and the WUSHU competitions very often have separate divisions in the same competition, and so this is a real opportunity to come and see all traditional at one time. So to your question, is there a time when people practice the traditional Shaolin styles without having the uniform? And I think that the young lady from the US actually was an example of that.
And a good start here in the women's Group B. There's the American. That flying extended punch was beautiful with her landing. The more you watch, even when they're doing the same movements, the more different that they all look. There's that similarity in the movements, but it's so personal. Martial arts is such an expression of yourself. But even after decades of it, Tony, you must see it even deeper, even more diversity between how they express themselves.
Sure, The routines are, especially when you move to contemporary routines or the same form, probably the best way of seeing it, Robin, is to see two people competing with the same form, but how different their execution may be in terms of speed, in terms of coordination. And the great thing about it is training is a practice. So you see, you can, if they practice enough, you can see the evolution.
But their forms are like fingerprints. They're just unique to them. And it's not like a permanent, lifelong fingerprint. Each time they do it, they'll have slight differences in themselves, even in their emotion, I'm sure. A tough day or a happy day or good news or bad news shouldn't interfere with your focus, but could change an individual.
Well, for many people, Robin, training helps to equalize them.
Take away the highs and the lows and smooth them out a little bit. Some great performances by the Kazakhstan competitor and the French lady. We saw France and Kazakhstan, and we may
Looks
see
like we have
exactly.
France again, Gay Laurent.
Yeah, we may see Kazakhstan as well. Miss Amina. Let's see.
One of the things that we just saw was a spinning kick, and sometimes there was a distinction there, Robin, whether the kick was a high spinning kick or a lower spinning kick, inside kick for the competitor. For our Kazakhstan, when they make the front stances, are the stances even? When they make the one-leg balance stances, how long can they hold it?
So we saw France versus Kazakhstan, mark 1 and 2, and they couldn't have been more different both. There's our French competitor. There's the young lady from Kazakhstan.
So we'll have someone from Bolivia and the Republic of South Africa starting their routine soon.
Can some of these teams, are some of them able to trace back who was the original person who may have brought their style to their country? Can that be done sometimes?
Depends on whether that teacher is still there. There are places where, yes, the teacher is still actively teaching, and they know who brought Shaolin Chuan to their schools.
Or they might be one generation off of that particular teacher and be able to trace it back one.
Some of the teachers will go, and this is how many of the styles have emerged in other parts of the world. A teacher will go and live in that area for a few years, and if they've stayed there long enough, a school or a cadre of students are there and they can continue teaching. In some instances, I know in Australia where the teacher has been there for a few decades, so the depth of the population of martial artists is even greater.
So the teacher will travel and seed new teachers and then perhaps move on or stay and develop.
Well, it really depends on, people move, Robin, throughout, just like anyone else. Teachers move throughout different parts of the country or places in the world, and they take their teaching with them, and that area benefits from this new style added to their repertoire of martial arts taught in that area. I had a friend from Italy who was practicing Shaolin Fist, and I also have friends from Poland who practice Shaolin Fist. They started because the teacher was doing seminars, but he's from Australia.
And our last two competitors in our second last group of the day.
USA
Shaolin
and
Xuan.
Taipei.
Yep. Chen from Taipei and Caitlin from the United States in gray or brown. Taipei competitors thus far have all worn the purple, the beautiful purple. There's Caitlin. And the visual of the calf wraps there are very specific to Shaolin.
Yes. And the interesting thing about this is an outgrowth. In Shaolin Temple, the practitioners were primarily men. The women, the nuns in the temple practiced a different style, but this just shows you how the emergence of the style and the growth.
And cultural change, you know, as decades pass or hundreds of years will pass, something that in one culture only a man would study, in our modern culture, men and women will study.
Well, they had women. I don't see in many, some of the women have practiced the nun style, which is a shorter range boxing style that you sometimes will see. We haven't seen them as of yet here.
You will see a young lady from Taipei, a young American. They wrap the day for our second last group. Oh, and Caitlin Tran finishes in first with a strong performance. Confident performance by the American. We have our final group of the day. 6 competitors, International Women's Group C, Shaolin Xuan. An American and a young lady from the Republic of South Africa, Chen from the United States in orange. And you see that soft, fluid, and then the strong
explosive.
Yeah.
She should do very well.
It's beautiful to watch. And that is our
Nerine from the Republic of South Africa. This characteristic horse stance of Shaolin boxing you'll see throughout.
After 2, you would think that Shen of the United States is a strong opener here.
8.78.
We will see 2 more groups of 2.
We'll have from Sinead from Republic of South Africa and Amanda from Argentina. Already underway there.
Sinead in the blue. There's that linear you were talking about in the movement. Just stepping out on different angles with that footwork.
Yes.
There's our Argentinian Amanda.
I'm excited for these competitors to have their 1 minute 30 seconds, 1 minute 20 seconds on the World Championship stage to show.
they should all just take so much pride in their preparation and then their focus and challenging themselves.
8.66分，4号
Sinead moves into second with 8.66. It was Miss Shen of the United States still in first. Amanda moves to fourth, and there are two remaining.
Anna from the USA and Alyssa from Italy.
They'll look to beat 8.78 for first and beat 8.66 for second. Alessia Tartufoli. You can hear that chant of Italy. It's the American. We saw the other American earlier looked very good, was holding first place. Let's see. As our final two competitors in the afternoon session of day one. Alessia finishing. What a day that has been, an afternoon session, hundreds of competitors, all different styles, finishing strong with the Shaolin Chuan. Both expressing their individuality while still staying true to their style. That little extra jump there, that was not planned, Tony?
No, it's a mistake. It's a brief loss of balance there.
Anna ends in fifth. So it will be an American in first, an American in fifth. And I believe Sinead from the, Alessia moves to second. So Sinead Ashley of the Republic of South Africa will be in third. Is that our mat as well? We see some more competitors on our mat. Our rundown is wrapped for the day, but we take the wide shot and we take a look at the results from the women's group C. Yes, it was Shen
Xiao Yi Chen from the USA. Alyssa from Italy takes the second spot, and the third spot is Sinead from the Republic of South Africa, followed by Nareen in the fourth spot from South Africa. What an amazing day of competition there, Robin.
Well, Tony, it has been a real pleasure, and it is going to be a pleasure to follow my curiosity and the curiosity of the audience to keep learning from you. But for you to get off that plane direct from New York City overnight, come in, land in Chengdu, take a car here to Emeishan, I thank you on behalf of our audience, and I thank all of our audience for tuning in today, day one of the 7th World Kungfu Championships. It has been a great pleasure. We're going to continue the deep dive into the beauty of the Chinese martial arts on day 2 and day 3. And for Tony Sims, I thank you all, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Robin.
And as we say goodbye, we will roll out on all of the results from this afternoon session. We will say goodbye as you see the results from the women's group traditional, as well as the results from the other competitors throughout the afternoons. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you to all the competitors, and thank you to you, our audience.
15号、16号、17号、18号上场。11号最后得分8.78。12号最后得分8.70。13号最后得分8.83。14号最后得分8.92。
3号最后得分8.68分，5号最后得分8.64分，6号上场。6号最后得分8.78分。男子 C 组武当拳，1号、4号上场，5号准备。
19号、20号、21号、22号上场。15号最后得分8.91。16号最后得分9.06。17号最后得分8.78。18号最后得分8.8。
奖处检录。
1号最后得分8.75分，4号最后得分8.67分，2号、3号上场。